Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Donnie with Designs by Donnie, and today I'm going to show you how I made this really cool river coffee table. You ready to do this? Let's go. I want to give a huge thank you to Total Boat Epoxy Resin for sponsoring this video. Let's begin by taking the two slabs over to the miter saw. I'm going to cut them to rough dimensions, which is going to be roughly around 77 to 78 inches long. Off camera, I put the two slabs in my slab flattening mill and got one side completely flat. Then I'm running the parallel side through the planer to help expedite the process. After running the slabs through the planer, they were completely square and flat. Now it was time to decide the orientation. So I basically just took them to my table, flip-flopped them around for a little while until I got the final look that I liked. All right, now we got the slabs completely milled, totally flat. Now it's time to move on to the next step, which is gonna be to debark it. Debarking, it's kind of a fun process for me. I enjoy it. Couple of ways you can go at it. You can grab an angle grinder, you can grab a sander, or you can grab a chisel and just start pulling away at it. Either way, every method works, and every one of those methods are pretty much about the same timeline for how long it takes. But this table's coming along really well. Let's go to the next step, guys. Let's do this. I opted for the angle grinder. I put my cut-saw wheel attachment on there, and I'm basically removing the bark, but I'm also kind of shaping the live edge a little bit as well. So that's why I opted for this process. The downside to the angle grinder is it creates a heck of a mess. As you can see here, the shop was covered in black walnut sawdust. But I took my shop vac, cleaned it up, and got ready for the next stage. When prepping for a resin pour, you always want to take your time and tape off any crack or knot, anything you can think that would possibly drain out. Because I assure you, if there's the slightest hairline crack, resin will find its way to it and it'll leak out. And the last thing you want is to have a big mess all over your shop. This step is called the lazy man process. Instead of building a form and putting the slabs in it, I'm basically just leaving it right on my shop table. I'm making some reference marks where the slab begins and ends, and then I'm just going to apply Tyvek's house wrap tape all along those edges. That way, if it does leak out, it's covered on the tape, and it also makes for demolding a lot easier. Alright, the good thing about this tape is it's completely transparent and I can see my reference marks that I made, so I can see where the slabs are going to sit. I'm applying silicone all along those edges, and this is just one extra measure that I take to ensure that the resin won't leak out. It's too expensive to have it all over the shop floor, so take your time and silicone it up. This step kind of goes without saying, but we're going to say it anyway just in case you've never done a resin pour. Cut 2 boards and place them on either end of the table. That way your resin will stay in the middle. Be sure to clamp your slabs down. You don't want them to float once you pour resin. You have a couple of ways of going about this resin pour. You could go a complete deep pour and use a 3-to-1 ratio or even higher and pour it all at once. Or you could do this in stages like I'm doing in this video, and I'm opting for the 2-to-1 ratio, as I don't want to have any exothermic reactions, and I've had a lot of success with the 2-to-1 and pouring it in stages. So this is my method. If you want to go with that, do it. If not, you can always go 3-to-1 and higher. Talking about this resin and it being 2-to-1, what that means is 2 parts resin, 1 part hardener. But be sure to get out 2 canisters or 2 jugs with equal measuring marks on it, and make sure you measure this out precisely. You don't want any exothermic reactions. I get a lot of questions about how long do you mix it after you pour the hardener and the resin together. For me, I always blend it to about 2 minutes. At worst case scenario, I would do about 1.5 minutes, but I wouldn't do anything less than that. You really want to get this thing properly mixed. So take your time, mix it well, and go for about 2 minutes. I'm adding black pigment powder to the resin. I'm basically gonna mix this up for about 30 to 45 seconds, and then this bad boy is ready for a pour. I'm ready to have some fun. Let's do this. Time for the pour. Have some fun, dunk it in, pour it in slowly, stir it around, whatever you want to do, just do it. It's a satisfying step. I highly recommend working with this resin and pouring slabs. It's a fun process. But once you've had all of it poured that you're going to do for this stage, take your heat gun and go ahead and pop all the little bubbles, get it nice and smooth. Now, if I was going to do a deep pour, I would use a little blowtorch. It's quicker and more efficient. But when you're doing small pours like this, about a 1/2 inch thick, the heat gun works great. And also, you noticed all the fans blowing on the table. This is to help stop or slow down the exothermic reaction process. Do not skip this step. Be sure to place fans all around the table. After my final pour was complete, I let the table sit and cure for about 30 hours, maybe just a smidge under that, and then I loaded it on my slab flattening mill, as it's time to get it all nice and flat again. I don't have a dust collection boot for my slab flattening mill, so I had to rig something up because this makes a big mess. So I basically just put my dust collector hose, I slid it over the top of the router, and it did suck up a ton of dust. It didn't get it all, but it helped out dramatically. I recently got this slab flattening mill from Woodpeckers, and I have to say it is ideal for this application. Now, I did have a homemade DIY jig that I used to accomplish this same step before the Woodpeckers jig. However, this is amazing and I highly recommend it. It just slides and glides. There's no deflection. It's completely perfect. I'm absolutely loving it and highly recommend it. Okay, whew, I'm glad that step was over. That was grueling. It took a while. I had to go much longer with that flattening process than I wanted to because I had that leakage that I told you about earlier. So I had to make several passes. Overall, it was brutal. But now that that's done, I'm ready to sand it. So I'm having fun with a nice little sanding sesh with Mirka. I'm basically starting with 80 grit sandpaper and I'm gonna end with 220. Talk about these slabs. When I first started milling them, they were 8/4, which is a true 2 inches thick. After I milled them and planed them, they were just a tad bit more than 6/4. But with that little bit of pour out that I had with the resin and I had to do all the extra milling, I ended up with 4/4, which is a little too thin for my liking. So I took some black walnut and I made a little border frame that I'm going to border this up just to add on the outskirts of this another 2 inches back to it. Once I glued the border and screwed the border, it was time to go on to the legs. So I'm just going to place them on the table. I'm going to take a straight edge. I'm going to make a couple of reference marks with where I want them to sit, and then we're moving on. If you follow my work, you know there's no piece of furniture that leaves my shop without adding adjustable levelers. No matter how much time I take to make sure a piece of furniture is completely square, every house has unlevel floors or uneven planks. So your piece of furniture will just teeter. So I highly recommend always adding these adjustable levelers. They're great, they're premium, and you never have to worry about a piece teetering again. I'm taking a tack cloth and I'm going to wipe down this entire slab. I'm trying to remove all the fine dust before I start spraying for the finish. Time to spray the finish. Now I would like to put this in a finish room, but my finish room has now become my office and kind of a storage area. So for the now, I have to do everything in the shop. Now I'm spraying on a oil-based poly, but you could easily do a water base. I've done it many times and they're fine, but the oil really comes out really hard and a nice smooth finish, and I enjoy the overall appearance of it once it's done. But I'm gonna do 6 coats. The first couple of coats, the pores of the wood are gonna sponge it up, but 6 coats is the way to go. Moving on to the 6th and final coat. But after the 5th coat, off camera, I took 1500 grit sandpaper and I hand wiped down the entire table just to remove any nips or bubbles or any imperfections that I may have gotten throughout the spray process. It really ensures a nice smooth coat. Now that the finish is complete, let's attach the legs. Now I want to say I'm not using threaded inserts as they're not needed on a coffee table. A coffee table is a fixed unit, meaning you'll never need to take your top and separate it from the base. Whereas a dining table, you're going to want to do the threaded inserts because you're always going to remove that top from the base for transport reasons. But the metal base has a 1/4 inch hole and the shanks of the screw are a little less than 1/8, which leaves me 1/8 of an inch all around the shank of the screw for seasonal wood movement. Guys, this project is a wrap. I had an absolute blast making this river coffee table. It's really a fun project. I highly recommend doing it if you haven't done any resin pours. I also want to take a moment and thank Total Boat for sponsoring this video. It wouldn't be possible without them. Alright guys, as always, if you like this video, please comment and like it. And don't forget to subscribe, help a brother out. Alright guys, have a great day. Peace.